Welcome back to the Kiki's Way podcast. It's good to see you, Ryan.
It's good to see you too. That was such a long breath hold. It started to hurt my chest. It was like,
hey, hey,
yeah,
hey. I just saw Hamilton last week, so I got
twice, right? Or just Katrina saw it twice?
Katrina saw it twice.
Okay,
I only saw it once. How's Lent going?
Linty.
Are you killing it?
I am.
I already admitted that I'm not, so I don't want to set you up.
I am. I'm wounding it.
You're wounding it.
Maybe I'm not killing it, but I'm wounding it. So, my Lent challenge. That sounds like 40 days, whatever, like some sort of like
75 hard.
Yeah. What I gave up for Lent is I noticed that I was just like obsessing about acquiring things. And so I tried to make my Lent challenge to not obsess about acquiring things. So that means stop buying stuff, but also stop looking up stuff, stop categorizing stuff in lists on Amazon, stop using Goodreads, stop using whatever, and just like enjoy.
Be more present.
Actually, well, be more present. But also, if like coffee and books and music are gifts from God, then enjoy them rather than like hunger for more things to put in that category. So I've tried to read more, and I think I've successfully done that. Both audiobooks a little bit, but also like actually using my eyeballs. And then
Who does that?
Coffee. I've just like spent my coffee time in the coffee box of my life.
Ooh, that slaps.
Yeah?
That is
you wanna
really
know why?
Good, Ryan.
Because I've been focusing on making it instead of buying more.
Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah.
I'm sipping on coffee that Ryan has made.
I roasted it. I brewed it this morning, and it's great because I'm focusing on that and not on like, what new $20 gadget can I get to make this 1% different?
Dang.
Maybe not even better. Like, anyway.
Well, going from the drip coffee from the church to that also helps. It's like going from Sam's Club Cola to...
Yeah, going from RC Cola to real cola.
Real Royal Cola.
Yeah. Anyway, so I've been doing pretty good. I still feel the desire to do those things. But then when I do that, I just actually engage in the hobby I'm trying to engage in rather than engage in purchasing and dreaming and oogling about inanimate objects.
Yep.
And spending my money on it. Been doing pretty good. Other than the fact that my job here at the church sometimes means
you have to
that I need to
things.
spend money. So then I find myself like trying to just like walk into the bush of equipment and things and being like, you can't look at that, you can't look at that, you can't look at that. Just buy this one thing and get out of there. Anyway, that, and also there's a book I've been looking for a long time called Praying the Psalms in Christ.
Ooh.
That sounds heady. But I had to read it when I took the Psalms class at Ozark, and I bought it, and then it disappeared. And I talked to Matt Stafford about it, who teaches that, and he was like, this is my favorite book. It's changed so much and whatever. And so a student was selling it for $5 when the cheapest you can find it is $40 usually. So I did say I would buy that. But I feel like...
Yeah, but that's like, I feel like that's found different. You.
That found me versus me going on christianbook.com and going through the $5 or less deals and picking out 11.
And it also
that's
was
different.
Face to face and like you're talking to people about it, which I think is different.
Yeah.
Now, I was trying to give up touching my phone as the first thing in the morning. That was literally the only thing I'm trying to do.
Did you buy a physical alarm clock or find one?
So here's the thing. We have one, and I have it in my room, but I don't know if you've ever been in this situation where you're out of outlets.
Yes.
And you have to move the bed or move the dresser in order to... Okay. That's where we're at.
You just need a 3...
I just need an outlet, but it's like buried. And I literally every night I'm like, I should move that. But then I'm like, I'm tired. I don't want to move that. And the goal of this is not to set up a physical alarm clock. Remember, the goal of this was just to not touch my phone. It's the first thing in the morning. Now, I think the alarm clock is a linchpin to this. However, I still wake up at the same time every morning, which is just dumb that my body just wakes up at 7 every day. And then I have to fight it. Like literally like, no, we're going back to sleep. Go to sleep.
Put yourself in a full Nelson.
I don't know if it's just part of getting older or just I have to pee or what, but Anyway, I've successfully done it quite a few times when I wake up and I don't think about it.
Yeah.
But the times that I wake up and I'm just like, I have something I'm thinking about already. I'm also a really big dreamer.
Yeah.
I don't know if you dream in your sleep.
I don't usually dream a lot, but I'm on a semi-new medication that's giving me a lot of dreams.
When I have really crazy
weird.
dreams, I wake up and my mind is not like my own, if that makes sense. And so like, if my phone's close enough and I wake up, I don't even think about it. I'm like still rescuing the giant giraffe from the alligator in my dream. So, hoping to do better the next few weeks.
I will let you borrow a 3-outlet extension cord.
I really appreciate that.
That is how we've set. Okay, we're gonna get to the verse of the day here in a second.
Yes, we will.
But quick tip for living. Just if you have 2 outlets behind the bed, plug a like 3-plug extension cord into each of them, and then put them at the 2 sides of the bed. That way, you each have 3 outlets.
So we have that already. Already have that
on
already.
Both sides?
Yes. So Katrina has her phone charger and then a different, like a lamp, and then a different charger for her laptop on her side.
Okay.
And then I have a cord that's going to our fan, a cord that's going to a lamp, and then my phone charger on our side.
It sounds like you need to charge your phone in another room.
Yes.
And that would also help you not touch it the first
Absolutely. Again, this is that whole idea of like, what came first, the apple or the egg?
I don't think that's the metaphor.
No, it's the concept of like, do you want to do the easy guilty pleasure thing, or do you want to hatch something new in your life? The chicken.
Okay,
so
maybe that kind of works.
Sorry, it was a bad analogy. I was mixing up two. It's just this is it's been something that I continually am like.
That is actually like that analogy actually works.
I don't know.
But anyway.
I digress.
This isn't the Shame Trevor podcast.
This is make sure Easter's horrible podcast.
Make sure you feel terrible. No, in my trying to read and engage in my hobbies in a more like life-giving way thing, I've been reading or listening to the audiobook for The Liturgy of the Ordinary by Tish Harrison Warren. And literally chapter 1 or 2, I don't remember, it's one of the first ones, is about making the bed and about how the first thing you do in the day sets you up for where you think you find every good and perfect thing in your day, and how she would wake up, get on her phone and scroll through the news and scroll through Twitter and whatever. And the same thing that you're talking about. But she said when she did that first thing in the day, that she felt the rest of the day that she was a consumer by heart, even if she tries not to be. That the whole day is about going and consuming news and media and telling your kids, hold on a second while you're still scrolling through something, and like that you definitely don't need to be whatever. Just like being easily bothered because you're always consuming. She said when she started making the bed first thing in the morning, which is so unnatural for her, that the first thing she did in the way her day felt was that she was co-laboring with God to put the world back in order, which is like the thing humans were meant to do in the very beginning.
Absolutely.
To co-labor with God, to tend the garden, to spread the garden by ruling over the whole earth and spreading Eden everywhere and tending to it and whatever. She said, I feel like I'm working alongside God when I make our whatever 7-foot by 5-foot bed in the morning. It's so inconsequential, but there's one little square of the world that I've helped to put back in order, and that frames the rest of my day.
That's pretty cool.
Anyway.
I run stairs a lot in the mornings right now.
Yeah.
Fasted, so I haven't eaten anything, drank maybe some water. That's it.
Yeah.
And I do it not maybe with the exact same spiritual, but definitely in the sense of like, if I run stairs and it's the hardest thing I'm going to do in my entire day.
Yeah.
And I do it in 25 minutes and I do it first, the rest of my day feels so much easier. Like I can't even explain it. Like I could be overwhelmed by how many meetings and things I'm going to have to do, the stressful conversations and tasks that I have to get done. And then I run those stairs and I'm immediately like, you know what? I'm going to get all that done because nothing's going to be as hard as that just was. And I found that to be, especially when I have a hard day, that it's almost like something I like her. Like I know I need to do. Like I almost need to do it. And today was one of those days. 'Cause I have a lot of things going on, and I was just like, I'm gonna go do it. I might have made myself a little sick, but here we go.
Well, hopefully this coffee's good medicine.
Oh,
okay.
it is. I hadn't had any yet. So
Now,
all right, to the verse of the day.
the verse of the day.
Hope you're doing well on your Lent journey too, and it's never too late to start. And don't feel like if you
also Lent is just a time for us all to give up something, but also as a spiritual practice, you can give up something at any time. God isn't like, oh, you missed the day, got to wait 360 whatever days for the next opening. Okay, did you see it yet?
I did. We are the
Proverbs.
We are the perfect people to talk about this.
Okay. We ready?
Yep.
What version are you reading it out of?
I'm on the NIV.
You guys already know what the verse of the day is because it's on the title. But we here in the past have just found it out.
We just found it out. So, charm is deceptive and beauty is fleeting, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised.
Okay.
Proverbs 31:30.
Yes. Let me read it out of the reasonably hardest translation. That's probably closest to the original language, but maybe almost the same. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. And now, possibly one of the easier ones. Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last. There's a different one. But a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. These all sound very similar. This is probably the right time to bring up my view of the book of Proverbs, which is, why is it in the Bible?
Well, I was going to read the message real quick.
Oh, okay, go for it.
Charm can mislead and beauty soon fades. The woman to be admired and praised is the woman who lives in fear of God. Give her everything she deserves. That's kind of the extension of that. But
okay.
So your view of Proverbs, because this is important, because this, I mean, here's the thing. I enjoy Proverbs. We've talked about it. We've talked about it a number of times that I kind of grew up with a dad that lived on axioms. So the concept of like almost like Yoda-isms, where it's like just grew up with like life is harder than you die. That was one of the things he would say all the time, and I was just like, what? Yeah. He's like, yeah, life is harder than you die, and I'm like, thanks.
How is that supposed to help me right now?
And
putting together this Lego Death Star.
And they're just little things that he would comment, and they were always fun. And I remember, no balls in the house is a joke that we still talk about all the time. Like balls do not belong in the house, no balls in the house. So anytime my kid throws something in the house, I have to look at him and be like, we don't do that in here. I don't say the same thing.
Try not to. Yeah.
But I feel like you have a similar view of like Proverbs is just a bunch of things that dads wrote down or people wrote down that were like axioms. But are they supposed to be biblical God-isms?
Yes. So I've had this hard time with Proverbs because I feel like you can use every Bible book pretty easily to find God and to engage with God. Even some of the weird ones. So Habakkuk and Song of Solomon talking a lot about two people being intimate and close,
sexy time,
and having fun. Anyway, but there are even ties within that, to how you relate to God.
Yeah, covenant language,
and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Who is it? George Whitefield or some like revival field preacher preached for 3 years, verse by verse, through Song of Solomon. And tied every verse to some spiritual reality between you and God. That's like trying to spiritualize every sentence.
That's a little much, maybe.
That's a little far for me personally, but mostly just because I feel uncomfortable, not because I know that it's wrong, but it just feels wrong, Anyway, but Proverbs, it's just a bunch of okay. If God's listening right now, when I read it, it feels like 31 chapters of 2-line fortune cookies, the little papers put in there, and then they taped it all together and put it in the Bible. I know that it's better than that. I know, but none of the Proverbs are promises. Like, don't answer a fool according to his folly, which is immediately preceded by answer a fool according to his folly. But none of them are promises. None of them are like, well, even raise a child in the way he should go and he will not depart from it. That's not a fact.
It's wisdom.
That's
it's
wisdom.
not a promise.
But that's not like, I raised him the way he should go. Why didn't God hit equal on the formula on his TI-84 calculator and output a child who did not stray from it?
I feel like Proverbs, though, is one of the easiest like books to immediately relate to. Like, you don't have to have any spiritual backing to read Proverbs and be like, that is true. You know what I mean? Like, that is a true statement.
But that's kind of my problem with it.
I know.
It's like, you don't need to believe in God at all. Honestly, you don't even have to have heard of him.
But that's the
and you can read
first
Proverbs and be fine.
That's the first proverb, right?
you're right.
The beginning of all knowledge is the fear of the Lord, which is, of course, why the Proverbs 31 ends with this idea of a good woman fears the Lord. And talk about the fear of the Lord for a second.
There's I need to defend Proverbs.
For your own soul.
It's in the Bible. Somebody else decided that, and it's probably fine.
Mark Duncan
I know
is listening right now.
With a sniper with the red dot.
He's coming through the door, and John Coward's behind him.
I just have a hard time with it. But I know that other people have found a lot of wisdom and guidance from the Lord through Proverbs. And so I don't want to actually claim that it's like not good or shouldn't be in the Bible. I just have a hard time engaging with it and finding something spiritually beneficial. But there is this chapter at the end, Proverbs 31, that we find our verse of the day in, that has been used in some really good ways.
Absolutely.
And has been used in some less than good ways.
Not so good ways.
Proverbs 31 is, what's like the name of it? Like the woman of wisdom or something like that?
Yeah, I think it's like the righteous woman or...
Yeah, it's...
the godly woman? Godly woman?
The godly woman. Those are all names. They could probably be like this. And it's 31 verses 30 verses after verse 1. The saying of King Lemuel contains this message, which his mother taught him. Then it's like a bunch of descriptions of a woman of noble character, of respect.
I think that's it. The woman of noble character.
Yeah, a woman who you should live up to.
Yeah.
This is a good guide in general. But there have been some people who have like tried to trash certain women because they aren't living up to some verse of this or whatever. Usually it's men, and usually it's men who are like, I don't have these same standards all succinctly put in one chapter that tell me what to look like and whatever, and I can hold this over you. Which at one point somebody showed me a chapter of the Psalms, which was like the man of repute, and I was like, oh, so there's a direct one that is exactly the same, but for men.
Yes.
So like you're not off the hook.
And it's not mentioned half as much or quarter as much in Christian circles. That's the thing.
That
too.
One's hard to find. You got to blow the dust off of it. And find it on the back of the Declaration of Independence with the invisible ink, and like you have to look. I'm still not even sure I found it. I just tried to Google it, and it's like there are a few Psalms that have come up. Anyway. But some people have used it kind of in a restrictive, punishing way.
Well, it's kind of like holding up anything. You compare yourself to anything. Like if you held up a, Philippians 2 and you're like, how much do you look like Jesus? You're supposed to look like Jesus, and you're like, don't really trying, trying.
It's been used in a similar way to, was it Ephesians 5 or 6?
Yes.
Husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. Wives, submit to your husbands and whatever. And that's what people hear. And then there's a little bit more about wives submitting and doing whatever. And anyway, they hear like, oh, husbands just have to love and wives have to submit.
Yep.
And it's been used in that way. But in the Ephesians 5 or 6, whatever chapter it is, the verse right before husbands love your wives is submit to each other out of reverence for Christ. And then husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. What did he do? Literally was tortured and died.
Yeah. Well,
so like,
I love it.
What sort of lording over is there free for you to do?
I always love how Andy Stanley explains this with a visual where he talks about like this verse. And I know we're getting off topic. We can get back to the Proverbs in a second, but Ephesians 5 is the way it's been used is like men you love and then women you come underneath the man. When truly what the verse is saying is men lay down your life women submit to that love. Men, lay down your life. Women, submit to that love.
If you're
Men, lay
just
down your
listening
life.
right now,
So,
what we're trying to say is you should be diving to be the person who submits lower.
yeah, lower,
Whether
lower,
you're the
lower,
man
lower,
or the
lower.
woman.
You create space, and you
Yeah.
you elevate the other person with your life. And so the marriage cycle is the same thing that Christ does. He becomes us so that we can be with him.
Yeah.
And marriage is the same way. We love so that the love can grow. And it's not about submitting. It's about understanding that submitting to a love of a husband that is self-sacrificial is a gift.
Yeah.
And it's in that culture, it was shame and honor. And love was so far from why a lot of people got married.
Yeah.
And so to talk about it in those terms was almost like reshaping what marriage was even supposed to be. The concept of marriage was more of a duty than it was love. And
so when we come back to Proverbs 31, this isn't the list of things that husbands should lord over their wives. This is just the list of things as a wife or a woman or a mother or whatever, as a woman that you should strive for, that aren't really that far off from what men should strive for. It's probably almost nearly the same. It's just specifically directed at women. But it's meant to be like, this is how you live wisely. Because it's in the book of Proverbs, the book of wisdom axioms. This is how you live wisely and how you apply the fear of the Lord as the beginning of wisdom.
I think that's really the application of this is, first of all, women just weren't elevated. They weren't talked about. They weren't provided kind of things from their perspective very often, if that makes sense. A lot of things were targeted at men. And so this having the whole chapter is really an intentional thing in itself. I think also it's hard when I read it this first time, like 10 minutes ago, all I thought was we really should have had a woman do this verse. Because the truth of the matter is, like, this speaks directly to some of the greatest fears and anxieties and goals or hopes, things that would bring on superficial feelings of accomplishment. And so this whole chapter is really kind of trying to tear down what kind of Ecclesiastes or some of the other Proverbs would do, where it's like, hey, what seems like the right way in your eyes is actually a foolish thing, and then what seems like losing in the Bible is actually going to be the way you win. And I think the fear of the Lord idea is the concept of, like, there is a thing that you do, a way that you live that is in reverence to God, not your own accomplishments, abilities, beauty, possessions, all that. And there's like a confidence, a contentment, almost a way to live that has kind of a wisdom to it. It's very similar to Matthew chapter 6, where Jesus preaches the Sermon on the Mount, and he says things like, do not store up for yourselves treasures on heaven or on earth, that where moth and things come in or thieves come in and steal. He says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where your heart will be. Where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. When I read the fear of the Lord in any context, 99% of the time I am thinking about that. It is the idea of, like, be afraid that you are not treasuring God and you are not recognizing his worth, his value, his power, who he is. And if you live with the perspective that he is the most valuable, that he is the most precious thing, that he is the thing worthy of your time, effort, and focus, you will have treasures that can't be touched. You will have things in your life that go beyond this world. And I think it's speaking directly to charm and beauty. And the concept there is, like, influence or the ability to look like you have an attractiveness to you, and then physical beauty, the idea of being looked upon and treasured. Seems very similar to me, of, like, these are things that over time they fade, they go away, they don't last. Like, your influence fades, your beauty, it doesn't hold up. And guess what? There is something that does, and his name is Yahweh. If you trust him, it's just different. So, in my mind, it's almost trying to do like the Yoda of, like, trust in your beauty, you should not. Like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that
Really.
type of like mindset where it's like you need to recognize there's something bigger going on than just the outside world or your ability to charm it.
Yeah. I was trying to find that psalm that
Yeah.
was like Proverbs 31. Can't find it right now. Maybe I'll find it later and link it in the
Well,
show notes. But this is an application both of fear of the Lord is beginning of wisdom, and because I wasn't listening,
No.
I'm not sure if you also said this, but it is also an application of 1 Samuel 16:7.
Mm-hmm.
Did he say that?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart.
Mm-hmm.
This is what was said when Samuel the prophet was looking for a new king, and he went to Jesse's sons and looked through all the big, tough Chris Hemsworths and Liam Hemsworths and Chris Evans and all the Marvel first line Avengers, and then found
Spider-Man.
he found Martin Friedman
Yep.
back there. He found the shorter, the younger, the weaker, and he was like, actually, that's the person that God wants to be king because of his heart. The rest of these guys had the physical attributes of a good fighter and maybe respected because of how tall they were or how old or whatever. But this little kid has the right heart that God is looking for.
And what's crazy is that you see that heart throughout his entire story. Then even in his mistakes, you see his heart. His repentance is insane. I mean, when he commits adultery and Nathan the prophet confronts him because he has Bathsheba's husband killed and all this stuff in 1 Samuel. And then even when Absalom, his kid, one of his sons, leads a full-on rebellion in 2 Samuel. And then he finds out that one of his guys, Joab, kills him. He is so heartbroken about it. He's still devastated, even though this kid has basically taken over his kingdom and done a horrible, horrible things. His heart still comes back to God. And, and what's encouraging about that, and I think what Psalm 31 is trying to say is like, listen, you can leave an uncharmed, non-beautiful life, and there is something beyond that is better. And it really is fighting for the heart of God, fighting back to see God as the thing that's most valuable, that's worthy of focus.
Yeah.
Again, this verse is super simple, but it's really hard to remember because I think the world is charming and beauty is attractive. Like it is.
There's a reason we naturally value it.
When I think about being charming and how fun that is, I know which Katrina bought me a shirt when we first engaged that said "Never a prince, sometimes charming," and that was a shirt that I wore a lot, and I wore it with pride. I thought it was hysterical. I thought it was really funny, and I do feel like there's a certain amount of charm in my life that is fun to talk to a waitress. Go to the tire shop and talk with the guys behind and just have like a certain way of like charisma or like hanging out. And it feels good to connect with people and feel like you're able to kind of get through difficult conversations or have some sway. But I also think there's some intentionality with recognizing, I mean, Harvard's done how many studies that's basically like, if you're prettier, you get paid more.
Yeah.
I
literally just saw, so again, is on a reel or something. So I don't really know how truthful it is. But I saw a study that came out that said that attractive female students' grade point average dropped a few points on average during the COVID pandemic when everything was online.
Mm-hmm.
And if that isn't like the heart of the matter we're talking about.
You can go look it up right now. Your height determines the average you'll make in your lifetime. And people that are over 6 foot on average, I forget how much, it's a significant amount of money, make more than people that are not over 6 foot.
Yeah.
And it's terrifying because you're like, why would that matter? But it's like, I don't know if it's monkey brain or what it is, Ryan. But
Lizard
it's like
brain.
Lizard brain kicks in and everybody's like, well, he's taller. He must be smarter.
Yeah.
He's taller. He must be better at things.
Yeah.
He's taller. He must be. And you're like, it's totally a physical attribute that doesn't.
But this, like you've mentioned so many times before, what Proverbs 31 and whatever that psalm is, that's kind of the equivalent, is pushing, is the stuff that's going to be said at your funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's going to be like, they were very beautiful. And everybody in the audience,
Cry.
if they were a jerk, be like, yeah, they did a good job in their life. They led a fulfilling life.
Because they were beautiful.
Yeah. That might even lead them into trouble sometimes. But this Proverbs 31 woman has invested in the things that her closest loved ones and family members and whatever will cherish when she's gone. And that's not the only reason to do it, but that's like the category of things being mentioned.
Yep.
Is the character, the things that really matter, the things that can change a life.
And that list is really healthy, I think, especially, if you're a woman and you're listening to this and you've gotten this far, like I encourage you to go read Psalm 31. Like it's really healthy. Don't weaponize it. Don't see it as like a thing that you need to go down and like just feel terrible about yourself if you struggle. I think it's more of just recognizing that this is almost like laying out the battlefield of temptations and difficulties to overcome, to recognize that your life is more than what this could be, and beauty and charm is the ones that are in there, but there's more in that list.
And those aren't evil or bad, but it's just like they are the things that seem like the quickest way to power and success and comfort, and things that you think you want that when you get them, you realize you don't actually want that much.
And it's also one of those things that if you build your whole life on, it's like sand at the end of Matthew 7, right? Like it eventually fades away. And your house is built on charm and beauty. And when your influence fades and your beauty fades, all of a sudden, what do you have left? And I think that is more of what he's trying to, the author of Proverbs a ton is driving back to the idea of like, there is a way to live a life that lasts, and there's a way to live a life that doesn't. And there's a way to look dumb, and there's a way to look wise.
Yeah.
There's a way to act smart, and there's a way to act foolish, you know, and just walks down like those, and ultimately, like you said earlier, it's the way that's not natural. It's the way that's not easiest. It's the way that making the bed, though it feels stupid and foolish, sets you up for success in a way, almost like that would be a modern day proverb, It's like the one that makes the bed wins the day, and you're like, what? Like, I don't get it. And you're like, no. And I think with anytime we do one of these verses of the day, I always leave going like, okay, that most of the time, unless it's like straight out of a gospel, I'm just kind of like, well, that's a random verse. And then by the end of it, I'm like, nah, that was less random than I thought.
Yeah.
Put in the comments too. I'd love to see someone comment or send an email in. If you even knew what Proverbs 31 was, like if you had no idea what it was, or if you'd read it before, and then tell Ryan if he's right or wrong that Proverbs doesn't deserve to be in the Bible.
There's one thing I want to say before we get out of here. There are a lot of lists about good and bad character in the Bible. But the way to engage them, we've kind of covered, is not to weaponize them. One way I think that I've seen that done really well, one of my favorite books on worship ministry has basically the way all the chapters break down is all these different hats a worship pastor should wear. So it's always the worship pastor as something. And so one is worship pastor as mortician. You're like, whoa. But it's just like, there's a lot about death in the New Testament, and even in 1 Thessalonians, we don't weep as those who don't have any hope. And so coming into worship every week, people shouldn't be surprised when bad stuff happens, shouldn't be surprised when somebody dies, and shouldn't be caught off guard. And so as a worship pastor, part of your job throughout the year, throughout all the seasons that go on, is to kind of train people to engage with death on a semi-regular basis so they're not surprised. There's 18 chapters of this, of different hats like that. Artist chaplain and theological dietitian. What you believe about God is partly based on what we've been feeding you every week in the service, and emotional shepherd and all these other things. And then the last chapter, the conclusion is worship pastor as failure. This is an impossible standard that not even I, the author, can reach.
How many people didn't get to that chapter?
But because they were that chapter. But it's a standard to work towards.
Yep.
None of us can be perfect, but we can always work on perfecting the imperfect. Our original call, like we said kind of earlier in this podcast, talking about Lent, our original call in Genesis is to be co-laborers with God, to be working to put the world back in order. None of that promised that we were going to make the whole world like the Garden of Eden within 31 days or within a week or once we got baptized or once whatever.
No.
None of that was a promise to that. It's just saying the goal is continue ordering the world that God created.
Absolutely.
Yes, this perfect spot, and you continue making the unordered stuff into the ordered stuff the way he hopes for it to be. And that's what Proverbs 31 and Ephesians 5 or 6 or whatever it is we talked about.
5.
And even the qualifications for elders and overseers and whatever. That can apply to everybody, but not as a qualification necessarily, but as like a standard to live up to.
One of my favorite verses, dude, is Matthew 11. It's the end, and it's from Eugene Peterson's version of the Message.
Yeah.
But it's are you tired? Are you sick of religion? Come to me, all you who are weary. And it's got my favorite line he has written that I've read in the Message. It's walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Come learn the unforced rhythms of grace. And it is by far my favorite line in the Message that I've ever read, and it sticks with me. I just actually, Mark made me a index card for Christmas, and I just pulled it out of a book, and it's that verse, and I was like, you jerk. And I read that just last night, and I thought, man, this is my life. It's not perfection. It's in the rhythm of grace.
Yeah.
But you watch him, you work with him, and you learn. You grow. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it.
It's a process. It's a thing you work on, and it's a thing you work on with God.
Yep.
Notice the second to last verse, the one that's the verse of the day, talks about a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Not a woman who has good character that she just worked on because she works really hard because she's so good at.
It's the heart.
A woman that's been with the Lord and has worked on this stuff and has adjusted her life because of the Lord's presence in her life. That's the same as the fruit of the Spirit, which I've said 1,000 times. The fruit of the Spirit is not stuff that somebody who works really hard at being a good person gets. It's the fruit from the Spirit.
Yep.
You are close to God. Yep. You work on being close to God, and this fruit starts growing in your life because God has been pruning you, and you've watched your own soil be rocky or be dry or whatever, and you've tilled it, and you've worked with God, and like the with God part isn't optional.
Well, and I mean, we talked about this too, 1 Corinthians 13, that the fruit of the Spirit and the love that's in you is going to grow as you grow, just like the love of a child grows into the love of a teenager, which grows into the love as a young adult, which goes into the love of an adult, which goes into the love of an older adult. And each one of those love, hopefully, in a mature person, gets deeper, more sincere, better. And
something you can do to remind this to yourself. Remind this of yourself.
Remind yourself.
There we go.
Yep.
Too many words.
Found it.
Took out the bad word. I didn't say a bad word on air. There's something really good you can do to kind of like cement this in your life. I mentor a college worship team in Joplin, which is not where we live, but kind of close. And they asked me to lead a Devo, so I did. And what I did was something I learned from my master's professor. So I'm just passing this thing down.
Yeah, man.
And it was like a very short thing called a baptismal renewal service. All it was is just kind of taking from our brothers and sisters in high church contexts, Anglican, Catholic, whatever, they baptize infants. We don't need to talk about that right now.
Mm-hmm.
But because of that, their baptismal is very small.
Yeah.
Very, very small. It's like a little bird bath at the front of their sanctuary, at the front of their worship building room. And when they walk in, every single person who's been baptized dips their fingers in the water and makes the sign of the cross. So they on the entrance into the space where you gather to worship, you dip your fingers into cold water, and that sensation just rushes through your body. And then you touch that cold water on your forehead, and you feel that, and you make the sign of the cross over yourself as you're entering into the place where you worship. That's their baptistry. So what they do every day when they come to worship is they remember, hopefully they've been led and taught this and whatever, but what we can do too is remember our baptism. Remember that we were baptized at a point, and it wasn't a point at which we were perfect Christians and we've backslidden, but it's a point at which we committed to Christ and we've grown. We've grown into our baptism. We've enfleshed the commitment that we made that first day.
That's kind of a cool concept. I'd really like to maybe even talk about that more.
So what you can do if you just want to do this at home and just remember your own baptism, or remember the commitment you made and how you're growing into that, is first thing in the morning, don't touch your phone, but get up, go to the bathroom, whatever. And even if you have to pee, hold it, you know? I'm kidding. You can, whatever you got to do. But the first thing you do is you go to your sink and you turn on the water and put some water on your hands because you were baptized, hopefully, in water. You put that and just like rub it on your closed eyes. That's something a lot of people do when they wake up. But do that with the intention that I'm remembering my baptism. I'm remembering that Christ covered over me when I identified with him. I'm remembering that I've joined Christ's saving vessel, his ark against the flood of sin and death. Like, maybe you don't have to use all that poetic language, but at least you can say, I was baptized, and he's been baptizing my mind and my heart and my desires every day. And this is another day where he'll do that.
Absolutely. And the Lord's Prayer would be a perfect thing to throw in there too, if you can memorize that from Matthew 6. The thing I want to end with, and if you're still here, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much. We've gone everywhere.
Gold stars. The thing I want to make sure you understand, and we talk about the fear of the Lord at the end of this verse, fear in this context, it does have some but it's more reverence.
It's respect. Respect sometimes doesn't even connotate the right thing. I've heard somebody talk about fear of the Lord in a really good way with electricity. Have you heard that? Or did you tell that to me and I'm just remembering it? Okay, then you get to say it.
No. Go ahead. You're ready.
Rock, paper, scissors. Oh, no, I'm kidding. So you told me. I just didn't remember that was that. Where they said that I fear the Lord like I fear electricity. I don't think about it all day, every day, and panic and worry and stress. But when I get by an outlet, I plug into it and it's fine. But when I get by an outlet with like a metal fork, I'm very cautious. I know what will happen. I'm treading lightly, but I don't live my life. But I highly respect electricity.
Absolutely.
I
it
play
could.
with it.
You are what is that famous book, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God?
Yeah.
Talking about what the fear of the Lord really is, and the concept of like that book was such a poor, anyway. It's just in my mind, I don't think you don't need to have God up there like a boy with a giant magnifying glass and you're just like in the ray of the sunshine that he's trying to just roast.
Yeah.
I think it's much more of that illustration of just understanding that there's this mystical, crazy, and highly holy, all-powerful being that when you're in context with the rhythms of grace, fine.
Yeah.
But you get in the wrong, it's like darkness and light cannot coexist. And when you learn that light wins and he is light, there's a little bit of like, got to get the darkness out of me because I know that can't go there. And I think there's just reverence in that. There's like an understanding and respect. So, hey, thanks so much for tuning in. This is a great verse of the day. I'm sure we'll kill another one of these eventually. There's a little bit of an anxiety attack every time we open but
not Zephaniah, no.
Good. And hopefully I'll get back on the bandwagon of the Lent. I hope you'll pick it up, and Ryan, you'll continue to
type your imprecatory prayers against Trevor in the comments. I'm so kidding.
Weaponize them. Go.
Weaponize it.
Well, have a great and glorious day in the Lord. We'll see you later.
See ya.